Hello and welcome. My name is Welcome. You are here today for the presentation on Tableau brings sales and marketing together. If this is not the presentation that you meant to be at, you should still stay because it's going to be amazing. Nice, good job. So let me get a feel of the room first. How many of you here are in marketing? Okay, awesome. How many are in sales? Awesome. How many work with me or for me and had to be here? Yeah, thanks for being here. It's great. Tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Kelsey Robb. I define myself as having the mind of an engineer, the eye of an artist, and the heart of an entrepreneur. Now, this is the corporate-approved version. My official title is Principal of Marketing Strategy at Windstream Enterprise. Now, my version, I firmly believe that plaid counts as work clothes, and you'll be happy to know I even found a plaid jacket to wear for this. I believe that board games are amazing. I am always looking for book recommendations, and adventuring is always worth it. Windstream Enterprise. We build and manage network solutions, including SD-WAN and UCaaS, to leverage the power made possible by the cloud. We are a network transformation company. Fortune 500, you can find us all over the United States. And the marketing strategy department within that to help set the stage. I work directly for the vice president of marketing, who works under the CMO. And it's my job to bring together product, sales, and marketing to deliver the right data at the right time to the right people, so we can make the best decisions possible for us as a department, but also for Windstream as a whole. So that's to help set the stage. My team, I have Penny Hill right here with me. She's my fantastic data person. If you don't have a fantastic data person, you should find one, but you can't have her. To set the stage for our problem statement, one of the biggest challenges I have and my department has is bringing sales and marketing together so we can provide a unified message across the departments and unified goals. So our problem statement, how do we bring together sales and marketing to effectively launch campaigns? Here's some of the things that we hear, and I'm sure none of you have ever heard these things before, but everyone is busy, we don't trust the data, and we don't need help. We got this. Don't worry, we have an answer for that. We're going to build a sales-enabled campaign leveraging Tableau to drive action, build trust, and create teamwork. The campaign, this is an award-winning campaign in the marketing world, and it's focused on sales enablement. So we as a marketing department came together and said, we want sales to be able to choose who they want to talk to and what message they need to deliver. So we set up a campaign with sales in mind. We went to our sales department and said, here's 5 different tracks. You get to pick which of your targets you put in which track. So whatever they're going after, whatever stage of the funnel they're in, you have the opportunity to set them up for success. We had goals by rep, director, market, and region. So this is the start of bringing us all together to say, here's the common goals. The data challenge, combining disparate data sources. We have SalesForce, we have our billing system, we have people's spreadsheets on their desktops, we have any number of data sources, all trying to come together into this one unified message. We had to provide relevance for individuals all the way up to the executive level. I want a single dashboard that a rep can look at, but also my executive team can look at and quickly understand where our team is in the process and build trust in the data. So the first problem statement, everyone is busy. Few key things that we were able to do. Leverage pre-attentive attributes and efficient design. So we were able to focus the audience attention to drive value by showing quick insight. Now, pre-attentive attributes, if you haven't heard that word before yet at Tableau conference, I'm sure you'll hear it throughout the week. And that is using shapes, colors, other design attributes to help focus the audience attention. See, there's your pro tip. Tableau always wants us to show pro tips. There's a tip, and it's in a different color. Hence, I'm going to drag your view up to that using different shapes and different colors to help guide you as the audience to see what I'm talking about. Focused approach. Of all the possible follow-up options, show sales who to contact next. One of the greatest challenges we have is we have a lot of different campaigns running. We're an enterprise level shop, meaning that we have a lot of different campaigns running. We have a lot of different leads and contacts within those campaigns. So we need to work better with sales to show them, of all the people that you could contact these ones first. So we can show them, this campaign that you chose launched 5 weeks ago. They are on their 5th touch. You need to call them this week because they just got the ultimate message. Call them this week to set up an appointment. We let the data drive the decision of what to do Monday morning. We are all inundated with emails. Or if you're not, then you must be doing something right. But we all have a ton of emails to go through. We have a ton of tasks, Post-it notes, sticky notes all over the place, giving us many different options of what to do Monday morning. This dashboard and the data behind it help us to point sales to say, of all of those different options, of all the different contacts you have, talk to these ones first. And ultimately automate the reports. My team was able to save over 2,500 woman hours in 2018. We went from manual spreadsheets pulling out of SalesForce and being manipulated by a lot of different teams. We went from that to a single source of truth in a Tableau dashboard, combining all of these disparate data sources to save us all time and energy. So moving from everyone is busy, helping to reshape the conversation to say, I'm going to help you prioritize your work. I'm going to help you go away from spreadsheets on your desktop, and ultimately design for ease of use to save time and energy. So by proving that value to sales, we as a marketing organization were able to come to the table with them and say, we're all in this together. And we all benefit if we have the data immediately and we have the data in a way that makes sense. So our problem statement, moving from everyone is busy to designing for ease of use to save time and energy in order to drive action. Note the pre-attentive attributes, different colors to help guide you. The next problem statement, we don't trust the data. I don't know if you ever get this, especially as a developer, but a lot of times what I run into is I say, hey, I came up with this really cool dashboard, and I take it to someone, and they're like, yeah, that's pretty, but I'm not sure I trust the data behind it. I can do it better. In order to build trust in the data, we have to be authentic, and we have to be vulnerable in that. One of the biggest things we did was develop to build trust. So we always provide the opportunity to look at the raw details. There's your first tip. Start any conversation with, the raw data is still available. We always put it at the very end of the dashboard, so you have to click through a few different views to get to that. But always start the conversation with, the raw data is still available. I'm not taking away your spreadsheet. I'm still going to give you your spreadsheet so you can do whatever you want with it on your desktop and you can have fun. But I'm still going to make you click through 4 different things because I want to start creating a culture where we look at a bar chart to better understand the data than only trying to go through spreadsheets. So always start with, the raw data is still available. Another fun tip, show on the front screen when the data was last updated. One of the biggest questions we get was, well, yeah, but like how up to date is it? This morning, 5 a.m. actually. And by providing that continually, we can help shift that conversation to say, let's stop worrying about when the data was updated. Let's stop worrying about what's in the details file. Let's start making better business decisions. So by providing those things right up front, we can start to move away from those conversations that take far too much time, effort, and energy to the conversations of what business decisions can we make better today? Drill down and through capabilities. A great way to build trust in the data is to start it at a high level. So for us, that means an executive level view, rolled up by region. and then have the opportunity to drill through. Because as people go through and they click through and they drill down, they better understand that yes, it does make sense, and yes, it does add up all together. The math actually does work. In one of my meetings with a certain group, I actually have on the whiteboard behind me, it says #BecauseMath. Right? Yeah, I think it's funny. Another great way to build trust in the data is to show that it's sustainable and reliable. So by combining disparate data sources systematically, we can better deliver the information. We had a situation where we had all these different people pulling spreadsheets from SalesForce. SalesForce is a great tool. When you have all these different people pulling spreadsheets and then combining them on their own, who knows what you're going to get? One spreadsheet we ended up with, it had maybe 20 different tabs, and they kept adding to it month over month. And what do you know? The formulas didn't drag down properly. So they came to a certain meeting, we came to a meeting, and they said, oh no, we're totally crushing it this month. And I looked at it and I said, well, no, you're not. Actually, if you look at it, you're double summing, right? So those are the things that unfortunately have to happen sometimes in order to show that value of using a systematic data source. Because as they go through, if you can, okay, I'm not going to say again that I told you this, but if you can prove them wrong, then they have to listen. So there were multiple instances where we would sit down, and that's another tip, is to open the conversation and set up time to review line by line. I dare you to challenge my data. I would love to sit down and review it with you line by line by line. And what you'll find is some of the detractors, once you sit down and you get them in the same room, once you start going line by line, once you get past 3 or 4 lines, it's all good. That also helps building the credibility, but also getting buy-in. If you're able to sit down, especially with some of the key stakeholders, and say, this isn't just a pretty chart, this is built on real data from real people. And let's go through and let's see this one opportunity that came in at this date, that went through this campaign, and let's better understand where it went next. If you can do that, you build trust. You also get that buy-in, because no one can prove you wrong. Now, there's a caveat with that. Make sure your data's correct. That's why I say get a data person. She's awesome. So moving from we don't trust the data, shifting the conversation to better understand line by line if you have to, but also providing that drill down and drill through capability. So if we can say, yes, we can go line by line, we can get down to a very granular level, but it can also roll up. So when I walk into a meeting with executives and they say, are you sure you actually had this much $1? I can say yes, and let's drill down and let's see exactly where it came from. And open the gates to raw data and conversation. I'm a firm believer that data and what we do as data people has to start with a level of authenticity and of vulnerability. When we're able to go in and say, we both want this to be right, and I want it to be right as the data person, but I also want to help sales and help you better understand where that data is coming from and where it's going. So moving from we don't trust the data to opening up the gates to raw data and conversation helps us to build the trust. Now, one of the other big points we get, we don't need help. This is something, the people who raise your hand that are in sales, I hear this a lot from sales. It's okay. But salespeople, as a whole, they make their living by going out and calling people and talking to people. And that's awesome. My job as a marketer is to make sure that sales has everything that they need to be successful. Developing a common language. When we have 2 different groups coming at it from 2 different perspectives, one of the greatest challenges is to develop a common language. If any of you are familiar with how SalesForce works, you can have leads, you can have contacts, you can have a target object, you can have all of these different objects and ways to talk about the data. So one of the first things we did, after a harsh realization that every meeting we went to devolved into a conversation about leads versus contacts and the lead routing process. So if you're not familiar, the lead routing process a lot of times goes through something like Marketo or any other version of your tech stack. And it helps develop the leads as it goes through. Eventually they turn into contacts, you make a lot of money, and everyone is happy. What ended up happening is instead of going into these conversations saying, you need to talk to this person next, the entire meeting got set off on technical confusion. So instead, we totally shifted the conversation. We said, okay, we're going to call them targets. And we can have the lead versus contact conversation another day, and we can set up meetings specifically for that. But for this meeting in particular, we are talking about targets. We are talking about the top of the funnel, however you define it, top of the funnel. So sometimes it takes all of these different definitions, it takes resetting the definition to say, this is the vocabulary, this is the vernacular that we are going to use as a department and as a company. Solid tip, make sure you show the definitions on the dashboard itself. Or start the conversations with, this is what this means. So we define an opportunity as this. We define top of the funnel as this. And we move away from having the distracting conversations of vernacular and vocabulary, and instead, we shift to making better business decisions. We're able to better establish goals across the organization, and I have a snapshot of the actual dashboard. One of the things that we were able to do is coming together both as sales and marketing to say, what are our goals? For far too long, we had two organizations working at different goals. So we came together and we said, okay, what does it take for sales to be successful? So we did some math, figured out they need, let's say, 1,000 targets. In order for them to hit their goals this month, they need 1,000 targets. Totally made up number, by the way. 1,000 targets. What can we as marketing do to help hit that goal? Okay, we can set up this campaign. We can help enable sales to get those targets. We can provide new targets. What do we need to do to get that top of the funnel goal so it flows through properly? From that, we can also establish that when we work together, we have better close rates, things move faster through the funnel, and we can set those expectations to say that me and my team as marketers are accountable for making things move through the funnel faster, through better lead conversion rates, and ultimately for bigger dollars coming in the door. It also helps drive more effective communication. If we're speaking to the same data and the same definitions, that's when the magic happens. When we can come together and say, this is that core set of data that we want to talk about. We already know the definitions because they were already on the screen. We already know what our goals are. So instead of worrying about different goals, instead of worrying about different words, different data sources, we can focus on actually achieving those goals. So moving from we don't need help to developing a common language and goals, getting everyone on the same page, getting everyone to the same table. And this took a lot of work. It took a lot of meetings with sales. It took a lot of meetings with marketing. It took executive buy-in to come together and say, we want to come together and do a better job as a whole. And what does that need to look like? Going back to that authenticity and vulnerability, it takes being able to come to the table and say, okay, what do we need to do better as a marketing organization to help you as sales get your job done? And vice versa, sales, what do you need from marketing to do a better job every single day? And by coming to that table, it's amazing those conversations that come up. It's amazing how simple things that sometimes just aren't communicated can make a world of difference. A great example on the dashboard that we had, it was an automated report that gave weeks since launch, right? And it's this really cool calculated field, and I was so excited. And I sent it to sales, and they looked at it, and they said, well, but the header, the title doesn't make sense to me. I said, okay. So change the title, change the title, change the title. We finally got to the point where they didn't understand what I was even trying to communicate. Something that as a developer, I thought was so straightforward. And it was a really cool calculation, and I was so excited to share it with the entire organization. Realistically, they didn't know what needed to happen. So I told you 5-touch campaign, right? So instead of showing weeks since launch, and making them do the math of 5, we shifted that to say, okay, here's your column. Do you follow up this week or not? Or do you follow up next week? So we shifted it from numbers, 1 through 20, to instead just binomial, follow up or not follow up. But that all came from a conversation. Having those conversations to say, I'm okay if you want me to change my dashboard. I'm okay if you want me to change some of those basic things that can help make a huge difference in a salesperson's life. Something that as a developer, I might think is super cool, they really could not care less. So coming to the table and having those conversations. I was very fortunate to have a true advocate in the marketing organization that worked very closely with sales. And we would have weekly calls saying, okay, what's working, what's not working? Talk to me about this. And when we released a second version, I actually sat down with one of the sales directors. I said, I'm going to give this to you. Show me how you use it. I'm going to actually sit down, and I'm not going to provide any commentary, because I can tell you exactly where to click and exactly what those colors mean. But I'm going to sit down and watch you interact with this dashboard. I'm going to sit here and see what you're thinking about. Because things that I think are super obvious, maybe to them are not. They might not see the bright purple line as something that's good. Okay, we can change that. It all goes back to that authenticity and vulnerability to say, I want to make what's best for the organization, and sometimes that means making some adjustments. So our problem statement. How do we bring sales and marketing together to effectively launch campaigns? So coming together from to the same table. Moving from everyone is busy to designing for ease of use to save time and energy. We don't trust the data to opening the gates to raw data and conversation, going through line by line if you have to. Moving from we don't need help to developing a common language and goals. By doing all of that, we were able to drive action, build trust, and create teamwork. So this is an example. This data is anonymized and randomized for purposes of this presentation. Just went in with a random number generator. But I want to point out a few things. This campaign that I'm talking about, we had 2 different tracks. So we had what we call the My Campaign track and the email track. So the email track was a lot less intensive. Just opt someone in and they get some emails. The My Campaign, because we want people to take ownership of it, so the My Campaign is focused, it's that 5-touch campaign. Now you can see we have our goals right up top with a very clear bar chart with the lines. We have the different metrics, and we also have it by region. Which region is winning? You can see that the darker they are, the better they're doing. We can also see it by quarter. So a couple things to point out on this. One, the raw data is still available to you if you so wish. You can see down at the bottom, and this is less important, but you can still see that we do provide all of these different target status, detail report, whatever fields are necessary, still available. So the raw data is still available to you. But also, be able to drill up and drill down. So the next view from this is the same exact view, but on a market level. So an executive can come in, look at this, and say, oh, Q3, we did a really great job. And specifically in Q3, it looks like all of the markets, all of the regions were doing a great job. Okay, now Q4, we're not that far into Q4. So, but we can see, the North region is actually doing really well. So an executive can come into this and view it immediately and see who's doing well, who might need a little attention. You can see that in Q2, the North rocked it. They absolutely did a great job. Now the flip side is the South wasn't doing such a great job. So that's a very easy phone call to make from an executive level to say to the South president, what's going on? Is there a reason you're not meeting your goal? How can we start this conversation? What's going on that you're not meeting the goal that we all established? On the flip side, we can also go to those super successful regions, the North region, for example, and say, hey, what are you doing that makes your team meet your goal consistently? What are you doing, and what are you finding out from that that we can leverage in other departments, in other regions? So how can we, as an organization, look at this data and say, we know exactly who's doing well, we know who's lagging, And also, we can provide that drill down. So the next view from this is exactly the same, but on a market level. So we have the executive view. It can drill down into a market level view. So we can go in and see, okay, on a market level, that market director can go in and say, hey, you know what? This particular region is doing really well. Or maybe not. So a few very important takeaways. First and foremost, design for ease of use to save time and energy. If it's hard to use, people won't use it. One of the greatest challenges about getting Tableau adoption across any organization is providing relevance and making it easy to use. We can do that by using color and shape to direct attention. We can also help them in whatever they're working for. So maybe they're spending a lot of time working in spreadsheets. Well, we can help automate that. We can move toward automation. We can move toward sustainability by working together to find out, hey, if you have a spreadsheet that you run every month, let's talk about that. How can I help you? And the more times we get that happening, the more often people are going to Tableau first and not their spreadsheets. We can start to drive everyone to the same views, to the same data, to the same source. Opening the gates to raw data and conversation by providing a details tab, drill down, and drill through. One of the hardest things is to go into a sales director's office and say, I want to talk about all of your different sales, and I want to go line by line, and that's okay. We can have those conversations. I would love to have those conversations. Because the more we start to have those conversations and the more we as developers can go in and say, okay, if it's not right, let's fix it. How can we come together to make it right? Because if I'm not understanding from a data side, maybe there's a process issue. But we can't know that and we can't really start to dive in and investigate until we're able and open to have those conversations. Ultimately, that helps to build trust. I want my sales team to trust me that the goals that I show and the results that I show are true and that we all came to that same goal. I never, ever, ever want to be in a situation where someone says, well, that's the marketing report. Let me show you the sales report. I want so badly for all of us to pull up that same dashboard. And sometimes it takes a while. But I tell you what, last month during their ops review, instead of going and just talking about bullet points, they pulled up Tableau in the meeting. It was one of the finest points of my career. I know. It was very exciting. And that ultimately comes from adoption, adoption, adoption. Getting that one-by-one person to say, hey, let me sit down. What's working for you and what's not working? Let me see how you're working with the data. Let me see what you see when you open up this presentation. And the more people start to see that value, and the more both sales and marketing are coming to that same view, the more adoption. But also, we start to see adoption from the ground level up. Adoption from the top down is important, don't get me wrong. Executive buy-in is essential. But when executives start seeing dashboards on their people's screens, when they start seeing presentations with Tableau in it, that's when that interest starts to peak. And that's when they say, okay, let's talk about it. Let's see this. And maybe someday you'll get them to pull up the live version in an ops meeting. And developing a common language and goals. Coming together for #teamwork to define and show definitions and goals. I talked about the lead versus contact conversation, where every meeting we had, instead of talking about the real business issues we needed to address, it devolved into this conversation about definitions. So instead, set your own definitions, and sometimes that requires going completely outside of the common vernacular. So instead of leads versus contacts, let's just call them targets. I don't know, maybe you sell fruit, and instead of cantaloupes versus oranges, you just want to say fruit. Whatever that is, help bring all of those things together, because the more time we waste spending on those conversations that happen over and over again, the less time we have to make better business decisions. And defining the same goals. So I showed you on this. So me as a marketer, I am responsible for making sure we get wins, making sure we get dollars in the door. I'm also responsible for making sure that funnel goes more quickly than it does without my help. So I'm responsible for part of this. Sales is also responsible for part of this because they're the ones choosing to opt in. So we have an official buy-in. We, as both organizations, are coming together to say, we're going to buy into this. And we're both accountable on either end of the spectrum. So defining and showing those common definitions and goals to come together with #teamwork. Ultimately, by doing all of these things, we can help leverage Tableau to drive action, build trust, and create teamwork. I'm proud to say that this suite of dashboards, we were able to increase sales engagement by 250%, which is huge at an enterprise-level organization. And it took us a long time. But we both came to the same table and said, how can we help you? And what do you need from us? They said, well, we need different marketing materials. OK, I can do that. OK, we need to know who to follow up with next. Done. We were able to increase engagement by 250%. We were able to save a whole lot of woman hours, work hours. And ultimately, we were able to drive that adoption from both ends of the spectrum so we can all talk about the same goals. We can stop worrying about who's talking about what definitions or who's using which marketing materials to ultimately say, we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat, paddling in the same direction. And create teamwork and drive that action. So we know exactly who we need to talk to. We can know exactly what needs to happen next. We know that if we don't put enough in at the top of the funnel, we don't get enough at the bottom. So we can go back to that view and say, hey, we need X number at the top. What do we need to do to make that happen? So pulling all of these things together to drive action, build trust, and create teamwork. Now, we're not totally done. I'm just supposed to show this slide. So please make sure you complete the session survey from the session details screen in your TC18 app. Suggested responses include fantastic, wonderful, life-changing would be OK. Any one of those awesome would be really cool. I'm counting for at least one awesome. Penny? Yeah. Now, there's lots of opportunities here at Tableau Conference to meet with other marketers and to meet with other sales professionals to learn more about what we're doing. So 2 different things I want to plug right now. One is the Tableau Live happening tomorrow for bringing both sales and marketing together. It'll be down in Data Village. I'm speaking with one of the vice presidents from Tableau. It'll be very exciting. And Thursday, we have a meetup supporting ABM with Tableau and LinkedIn. So ABM is the latest buzzword in the marketing world, account-based marketing, if you're not familiar with it. And the concept is shifting from we want to talk to this individual person time after time to we want to target specific accounts and make those accounts more successful. All right, so shifting from, we like to call it spray and pray, where you just send out 1,000 emails and hope that one of them opens it, right? Because we're going through a shift as a marketing world, right? When email first came out, it was, hey, as long as you can send an email and get it into their inbox, they're going to open it. Now, I don't know about you, but I get a whole lot of emails. And you go to conferences like this, and every time they scan your badge, you get another email. It's magical. So we're in a shift in the marketing world to shift away from that view of just spray and pray to how do I get to the right person? How do I get in the room with those people? How do I get in the room with other marketing professionals to learn from them and to show off which products are truly the best? So we're going through this shift as a marketing world, and I love talking about it, and you'll be able to talk about it with me on Thursday. So those are the 2 things I really want to plug is, there are other opportunities here at Tableau Conference to really dive in with other marketing professionals. And this is a great organization. One of the reasons I love Tableau is because the people here are open and vulnerable and authentic in their questions. So you'll hear people talking about, I don't know how to do that. Well, someone else here might. And that's awesome. So there's 2 other options to hang out. Let's be friends on LinkedIn. You can find it there. Right? Yeah, hey, LinkedIn is here. That's cool. Yeah. That's awesome. And with that, I'll take any questions at this time. Yeah?
What kinds of data do you use to help your sales reps prioritize who to contact next?
Absolutely. So the question was, what kind of data do we use to help them prioritize who to contact next? So there's a couple different approaches. One is this campaign that we ran was a 5-touch campaign. So we were able to say, hey, in the 5th week, that person that you targeted is going to get the final, that final email that really hits home, or that final mailer in their mailbox. So we were able to say, we know exactly when that will be delivered. We worked with our production company to say, make sure we know, make sure it's on time. And so that day, the same day that the target would get that mailer in the mail, sales knew that they needed to talk to them. So that was just math, basically. So saying, hey, we sent it on this date, and we know that it's 2-day shipping, so we know that date. So that's one way. The other way is our company is shifting toward an ideal customer profile. So we're working with machine learning and AI to bring out different tactics and different understandings of our customer base to know who to target next. So we use a tool for that, but there's a lot of different ways. There's some things that we as an organization work towards, different demographics, technographics, et cetera, that also help us prioritize. So, retail, maybe you don't want to talk to anyone in retail in December because, well, they have other things on their mind. So using that, we can also help prioritize that. So in this specific example, it was purely date-based. It was, you need to talk to this person because they're going to get this really sweet mailer in the mail, and they're going to want to talk to you. So call them today. In the rest of the world, we use our ideal customer profile targeting. So use technographic, firmographic, demographics to help prioritize. We can also use that information to better understand who to target next. Things like market basket analysis. So taking a look at all of the different products that someone has. Our company, we have about 40 different main products that we sell. So taking a look to say, hey, if you have, for example, internet, you probably should also get firewall. Things like that we can then send to sales and say, this customer that you're getting ready to talk to next, they have internet, but they don't have firewall. That should be an easy sell. That should be the next product that you sell. So a couple different ways. Does that answer it? Awesome. Yeah?
I know you were saying that in your efforts that it resulted in a 250% increase in sales engagement. What metrics are you using to quantify sales engagement?
Right? So the question is, how do you quantify sales and engagement? And that is a tremendous question. And I love talking about this, and I love talking about marketing attribution and marketing influence and all of that stuff. So specifically for sales engagement, we did a campaign somewhat similar to this a year ago. And we learned a lot since then. So we actually had a previous data point to actually look at. So we could see, okay, well, they opted in X number, and this year they opted in this number. For me, one of the greatest metrics that we were able to shift towards was we were able to show sales that with this engagement, with these campaigns, we show a higher lift. So this is something that 3 months after the fact, 6 months after the fact, for a longer sales cycle, we were able to go back to them and say, hey, this is great. We all came together and we made a pretty picture, but also there's business value in this. There's business value in coming together because we can show that this campaign is X amount more successful than this campaign. And even more so, both of these campaigns are X amount more successful than without a campaign. So going to sales, and with sales, it's all about that dollar, right? So I can go to my salesperson and say, listen, when we work together and when we're on the same team, you make more money, and that's amazing, and the company makes more money. And then my life is easier because the stock price is higher and everyone is happier. It's purely selfish reasons. But that was one of the greatest impacts as far as a raw metric goes. Yeah?
As you were driving towards adoption, did you find it was more effective to have key members of your leadership team be the ones to kind of press it on everyone else, or to get the buy-in from the sales team and have the sales team, like you said, bring up a halfway back toward it, and then the leadership team go, oh, wow, I can do that. Did you see which way it was maybe more effective?
It's a great question. So the question is it more effective to get top-down adoption, or more effective to get bottom-up adoption? If you would have asked me this question 6 months ago, I would have said top-down, 100%. All of the books say top-down, right? After this process, I'm a firm believer in bottom-up adoption. And the reason being, executives are very busy, right? They get their ops deck every month, and they have a lot of other things to worry about. the everyday salesperson, we were able to get a few key contributors to really buy in. We said, hey, this guy named Mark. So on the secret with real data version, everyone else is kind of here, and then he's just way up here. So we went to him and we said, hey, how can we make this a way that makes sense to you? Because you've clearly bought into the campaign itself. So we had kind of a twofold adoption, right? So we had to get them to buy into the campaign itself. We were actually very fortunate that the campaign had some big wins early on, so adoption was a lot easier from that. We can prove it and say, hey, we got this major account because they did this, therefore, you should also do this. But we also had the issue of Tableau adoption, and our sales team really hadn't used Tableau in the past. They had seen screenshots of it, but they were very much focused on downloading things from SalesForce into a spreadsheet. But working with them, and it took us a little bit to get them to say, okay, yes, this works. And it wasn't until we were able to get that list of who to contact next that they really started to adopt. Because it was clear, I can show all the bar charts in the world, and I can show you some very pretty things in Tableau, but until it made their lives easier on a Monday morning, that's when we really got that adoption. And from there, they would take it to their director, and when they met with their director, and the director would say, okay, what's on your docket for this week? And they were able to just pull it up and say, these are the people that I need to talk to. Then all of a sudden, the directors got bought in, because they said, oh, my people know what they're doing. They really have their act together. So the salesperson got excited, because their director thinks they're awesome. It also made their lives easier. The director got excited, because suddenly the sales force is engaged, and ultimately, it rises up. So it's an interesting dynamic. Yeah.
You mentioned in previous answers to your question how your company utilizes different types of technographic stuff to essentially come up with AI support for machine learning models. How do you marry that world into sort of a black box of output versus translating it to something digestible for making actually and what's your strategy?
That is an excellent question, and it is one that I struggle with every day. So the question is, moving into this AI machine learning environment, how do we translate the black box? So it's fascinating to me because as a whole, we are more critical of what machines do than we are of humans, right? So if I have a salesperson say to me, wow, we are really seeing success in the manufacturing industry, and we're like, awesome, let's build out some materials for manufacturing. If I had machine learning, artificial intelligence, come out and say, you should go to manufacturing next, I'm going to get a whole lot of calls to say, but why, right? So a couple ways. One is, one of the ways we were most successful was we ran a model for a very specific product, for our SD-WAN product. So we ran a model for this product. We said, okay, so we're seeing success in industries A, B, and C. But also, industry D has a lot of the same views and a lot of the same drivers as these other industries. So we were able to say, I agree with you that A, B, and C are great industries to go after. Also, here's industry D, because here's your top 3 reasons why. One of the most difficult parts about any of this AI machine learning is that there are so many different attributes that go into it. Right? So the tool we use has 4,500 different columns of data that it pulls in. Right? Now, I can't go into a salesperson's office and say, well, according to this tool, we have X% lift and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to lose them in no time. So it's tough to bring it down into a digestible way so it's actually actionable. And that's where we actually go in and we say, okay, here are the top 3 reasons that this person would be a good target. So they're in industry A. They use this particular technical tool, right? So let's say they're in manufacturing and they use Skype. And they also have this other indicator that means they're indicating towards security, right? So we can go in and say, here's the top 3 reasons. They don't need to know that there's actually 4,500 other things going into it. But if we can take it into words that they understand, words that they're already using, use some of it to confirm it and say, I agree with you, A, B, and C are great. Also check out D, because they also use the same technology. Does that help answer your question? It's tough. You asked a question on how to explain something that I can't explain, so it was awkward. Yeah?
I guess I'm going to ask a very specific question.
Yeah.
I would say I have like a multi-adoption problem where like some salespeople use it and are very good with it, and some salespeople still continue using on data analysts for kind of Q&A complaints.
Absolutely. So the question is, if you have a situation where some of the analysts really buy in, or some of the reps really buy in, and some of them are still coming to you every single day with, hey, I need to know who to follow up with next, right? So I actually have some of those, and I still have some of those. I haven't solved all the problems in the world, just most of them. But there's one in particular that would call me every single week and say, well, you know, I just don't know, I opted these people in and I don't know where they are in the campaigns. Okay, there is actually a details file for you. So I would get on the phone with them, and we would share a screen, and I would go into Tableau and say, this is where I'm clicking, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it's obnoxious on my part because I have to show him the same exact thing every single week. But hopefully, at some point, I'll be out of the country, or I'll be at Tableau conference speaking, and he won't have me there to click for him. So sometimes it takes those one-on-one conversations where you just have to sit down and you're like, all right, let's figure this out line by line. Let's figure it out. And eventually, they start to self-serve. And the hope is that you can prove enough value that they know it's worth their time to figure out where to click. Does that help? Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk a little more about where you do your attribution model and how you feed them?
So the question is attribution models and how you feed them into Tableau. Oh, that's a hard one. So if any of you are familiar with the marketing world, one of the greatest challenges is marketing attribution. So, and this is across, there's a million different companies out there that do it or say they will do it. There's a million different tools out there that say they will do it for you. And one of the biggest challenges is how do I go into sales and say this campaign is the one that made that sale? Right? I'm not going to be able to do that because sales will come back and say, I would have sold it whether or not they got that little bamboo plant, right? Exactly, yeah, and okay, maybe you would have, right? So I have my fancy data person essentially build out, so right now we're on a last touch attribution model. So we can show all of the different campaigns that hit any given win. Right now we're at a last touch attribution model, which is essentially the last campaign to touch it before it wins. Now this is like level 1 of marketing attribution, right? And it's tough to even get there. And if you're already there, give yourselves a pat on the back because it is hard. So from that, now we can move toward a multi-touch attribution. So we can go in, and this is all just built in SQL because if you can find a way to do it effectively in SalesForce or in whatever tool that you use, more power to you. For us, especially being in an enterprise shop, we have a very complex build for SalesForce, and we have a very complex data source behind it. So it's incredibly challenging. So we're at last touch now. We're moving toward multi-touch, and what that will look like is essentially a weighted distribution, right? So first touch gets 20%, last touch gets 20%, and the rest are divided up with however many else are in there. And so we can eventually move toward being able to show that. Now, in Tableau, we show it as a very basic funnel, right? So we can show, here's how many targets we put in at the top of the funnel, here's how many converted, here was the rate of conversion, here's how many days it took on average, all the way down to the wins. But we can also show by campaign. So we can drill down and see, our top level campaigns, whether it's a sales enablement like this one, whether it's, an SEO campaign, whether it's whatever that campaign, a nurture campaign. So we can start to look at it that way. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah?
Are you attributing back to the account level or the individual contact level?
So the question is, are you attributing back to the account level or the individual level? So here's my view on account-based marketing, because all accounts, you still have to target a person, right? I can't send an email to Google, right? That doesn't work. I have to send it to the CIO or the VP of information, whatever that is. So we actually roll it up to an account level. So we bring it in at a leader or contact level and roll it up to an account level. Because otherwise it's just, and we're still shifting in that. Sometimes it's hard because you'll get a random target or a lead out there that it's tough to actually bring into the fold. But overall, it's at an account level. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about SalesForce? And do you pull in Tableau dashboards and embed them into SalesForce? Like what are see how you get the data?
Yeah. So it's really cool if you can actually get Tableau embedded in SalesForce. We're not there yet, but it is really cool. I've seen it on the internet. To those of us that are from Windstream in the IT department, I'm sorry to say this, but sometimes our IT department isn't super fast. Sorry. So you can absolutely do that. So we actually go into the backend tables and pull it out into a table. So we pull it out, we actually have a view that runs. So then it's completely updated, and then when that extract hits, so we have a daily extract. So we have our core tables, we have a view that runs against those tables, and all of that is automated. And then we have that extract that pulls in, every night, it refreshes, and so it refreshes from the view, so the view is always updated to the tables. And so that's kind of how we do it. And then we build from the extract. So then whether I'm building or someone on my team is building, we're always going to that same extract, we're going to that same server extract, so we always have the most up-to-date data. Yeah?
So, I'm trying to think how to ask this because I know it's sort of different, but if you blend SalesForce data maybe with billing data, is that done in SalesForce or do you guys have to blend that with other sources?
We have to blend it outside. We're moving toward it all being in one place and just beautiful, and the angels will sing. Exactly. So the question was, do you have to blend the billing data with Salesforce data outside? And yes, we do. We're not at that point yet. We're getting so close, though, and that will make my team's life a lot easier. Yeah. I'm using Penny. So the question was, what do you use to blend them? And I use Penny. We're not in Tableau prep yet. That's on my list of things to learn about this week. So I'm excited for that. She was just saying that she uses Alteryx. It's a very challenging thing because you're bringing together disparate data sources that don't match up, right? And the data itself doesn't match up. And I mean, if you were in a state where you even have like a unique identifier that can speak across the two, then that's amazing, and you should thank whoever built that data source. But the reality is, unfortunately, so oftentimes that doesn't happen. And speaking from personal experience, as we move to a true account-based model, then that will be a lot more straightforward. I saw a question over here. Really? Did I answer it? Yeah, so the question is, talking about bringing in disparate data sources, what's the biggest challenge? And making sure that things match up is honestly one of the biggest challenges, and different levels of aggregation. Right? So if I know that I targeted the CIO of this company 5 different times, but then this guy over here is the one that actually bought the product, how do I bring that together? And how do I bring it together in a way that makes sense and is sustainable, and that when sales comes back to me and we go line by line, that they don't call me out? It's one of the greatest challenges, I would say, in the marketing space, is to bring together all of this information. So we have to do it in SQL. We're not advanced enough to have something super fancy that solves all of our problems. We have to pull it into tables and do manual manipulation from there. Any other questions? Oh my gosh, perfect timing. That was so great. Okay, so make sure, I'm sure you all got this, and I'm gonna see you Wednesday and Thursday, and we're gonna be friends on LinkedIn. But please make sure you do your session survey on the Tableau session details screen. Remember, words like awesome, fantastic, wonderful are all accepted and welcome. And thank you all so much for coming.